She never expected her ex-husband to leave her stranded at the airport. But when a mysterious billionaire CEO offers her a seat on his private jet, everything she thought she knew about life and love changes forever. Could this chance encounter be the beginning of something unforgettable? Welcome back, my wonderful family and friends. If you're tuned in and ready to dive into today's story, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from. Tomorrow, I'll be bringing you another exciting story you definitely don't want to miss. So, let's get started. Airports were supposed to feel exciting. People rushing toward new beginnings, new cities, new chances. But for Catherine Hale, Gate 32 of JFK Airport felt more like a reminder of every disappointment she tried to outrun. Her suitcase leaned against her leg, a cheap plastic wool squeaking every time she shifted her weight. She checked her phone again, hands trembling slightly. The last message from her ex-husband stared back at her like a cold slap. "I can't make the trip. It's not my problem anymore." That was it. No explanation. Not even a decent excuse. She swallowed, blinking hard at the screen. They had been divorced for 7 months, but for some reason, he still had a way of making her feel small. Like her needs, her plans, her hopes were always an inconvenience. She had agreed to meet him in Chicago for one final conversation about the apartment they once shared. Closure, she had called it. A mature step her therapist had encouraged. But now, standing miserably in a buzzing airport terminal, Catherine felt foolish for thinking he'd ever take responsibility for anything. A voice over the intercom echoed through the hall. "Attention passengers. Flight 287 to Chicago has been canceled due to severe weather conditions." The crowd groaned. People rushed toward the counters. Catherine's heart sank. Canceled. Hotel rooms around the airport were already booked because of the storm front. She checked the rideshare apps. Prices had skyrocketed. Every cab outside was full. The next available commercial flight wasn't for another 20 hours. She sank into a cold plastic seat near the gate, pulling her coat tighter around her shoulders. The terminal lights flickered faintly above, and a cluster of children nearby argued over a bag of chips. A businessman paced with 2 phones in his hands. A tired mom leaned against her suitcase, eyes half closed, and Catherine sat there, invisible in the noise, holding onto a day that had already fallen apart before it began. Her phone buzzed again. A message from her best friend, Mia. "Did he show?" Catherine typed slowly. "No. He left. The flight's canceled too." 3 dots appeared, disappeared, came back. "Come home then. Stay with me." Catherine stared at the message, her chest tightening. She didn't want pity. She didn't want to show up on a doorstep crying over a man she shouldn't care about anymore. She needed a moment alone. Not to fall apart, but to breathe. She set her phone down and rubbed her forehead, closing her eyes just long enough for her thoughts to settle. "Excuse me," a warm voice said. "Is anyone sitting here?" Catherine jolted slightly and opened her eyes. A man stood before her, tall, steady, with a calm expression that looked strangely out of place in the chaos of the airport. His suit jacket draped neatly over one arm. His dark hair was tousled just enough to suggest he'd been traveling all day, yet he carried himself like someone who didn't rush for anyone or anything. She shook her head. "No, you can sit." He nodded politely and took the seat beside her, setting a sleek carry-on bag by his feet. For a moment, they sat in silence, lost in their own worlds. But then he glanced at her again, really looked, and she realized he must have noticed the redness around her eyes. "Long day?" he asked gently. She forced a breath. "Something like that." He waited a second, not pushing, just giving her space to continue if she wanted. And surprisingly, she did. "My flight got canceled. And," she hesitated, "someone who promised to meet me in Chicago decided not to show." He didn't comment, didn't offer empty advice. Instead, he nodded once with quiet understanding. "Sometimes," he said softly, "people disappoint us in ways that say more about them than about us." His voice was steady, almost soothing. Catherine let out a tight laugh. "You sound like someone who's had practice saying that." He smiled faintly. "Maybe. She glanced at his carry-on. High-quality leather. Initials carved into the tag. RS. She didn't ask what it stood for. Instead, she asked, "Are you trying to get to Chicago too?" "Yes," he said, checking his watch. "But I'm not depending on commercial flights tonight." She raised an eyebrow. "You have another option?" He nodded. "My pilot says the weather should clear enough for us to leave within an hour." "Your pilot?" Us. Catherine blinked. She knew what that meant, but it felt ridiculous even to guess. He saw the confusion flicker across her face and added calmly, "I'm Robert Storm, by the way." The name danced at the edge of her memory. Storm Technologies, Storm Industries. She had heard it somewhere, business news, maybe social media. A young CEO known for being brilliant and extremely private. Her heartbeat stuttered. She didn't squeal. She didn't stare. She just sat there, processing, blinking slowly. "Oh," she said quietly. "That's Storm." He looked almost embarrassed by the recognition. "I usually don't lead with that." "It's fine," she said quickly. "I just wasn't expecting to meet someone like you at Gate 32 of all places." He chuckled under his breath. "Trust me, I wasn't expecting today either." Silence fell again. But this time it wasn't awkward. It felt like sitting beside someone who wasn't asking for anything from her. Someone who wasn't trying to impress her or dismiss her. Just someone present. The kind of presence she hadn't felt in a long time. A woman's frantic voice suddenly rose behind them. "There are no hotels left? None? Are you serious?" Robert glanced back at Catherine, then spoke before she could even spiral again. "Catherine," he said gently, "I have a jet leaving soon, and I'll have an empty seat." Her breath hitched. He held up a hand, reassuring. "I'm not asking for anything. I'm not expecting anything. I just don't believe anyone deserves to be stranded after being treated unfairly." Catherine's throat tightened. He wasn't flirting. He wasn't arrogant. He wasn't trying to impress her. He was simply offering kindness, kindness with no strings attached. She hesitated, glancing around at the crowded terminal, the blinking delay boards, the chaos she was stuck in. Then she looked back at Robert, at the calm eyes watching her without pressure. "Are you sure?" she whispered. "Yes," he said softly, "as long as you feel safe. If not, I completely understand." Catherine exhaled slowly, a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding. "Okay," she said, voice trembling just slightly. "I'll go." Robert nodded with a warm, relieved smile. "Good," he said. "Let's get you out of here." And for the first time that day, Catherine felt something shift inside her. Something gentle, something hopeful. Like maybe, just maybe, she hadn't been abandoned at all. Maybe she had been placed exactly where she needed to be. At Gate 32, beside a stranger named Robert Storm, whose kindness felt more surprising than any jet he could offer. Catherine sat alone at Gate B27, her suitcase beside her, her ex-husband's last words echoing cruelly in her mind. "Figure it out yourself." He had taken the earlier flight, intentionally leaving her behind after a petty argument about slowing him down. She had stood there, stunned, watching his back disappear into the crowd without even a glance over his shoulder. Now 2 hours had passed. The terminal bustled around her. Families reuniting, business travelers tapping on laptops, kids laughing as they ran around the seats. Catherine felt like the only unmoving object in a world that kept turning without her. Her phone buzzed. A message from her ex. "Hope you catch another flight. Don't call me." She swallowed the sting. She wouldn't give him the satisfaction of a reply. She exhaled slowly, forcing her shoulders down. She wasn't going to let this moment define her. Not anymore. Just then, a voice interrupted her thoughts. "Excuse me, is everything okay?" Catherine looked up to see Robert, the polite, slightly mysterious man she'd met earlier when asking for directions. He now stood before her holding 2 cups of coffee, offering one out to her with a gentle smile. "You look like you could use something warm," he said. Catherine blinked, surprised by the kindness. "Thank you. That's really thoughtful." He sat a respectful distance away, setting his own cup on his knee. "Your flight get delayed?" Catherine hesitated, then decided to be honest. "Not exactly. My ex-husband left without me." Robert's brows lifted, but he didn't comment. No judgment, no pity. Just quiet understanding. "That must feel awful." "I'm sorry." "It's fine," she said, though they both knew it wasn't. "I'll figure something out." "I always do." Robert nodded, studying her face with a warm, calm attentiveness. "Where are you headed?" "Seattle. My sister's having her baby soon. I promised I'd be there." He smiled softly. "That's important." "It is." For a moment, they sat in comfortable silence, watching planes taxi across the runway. Then Robert cleared his throat. "Listen, I don't want to overstep, but I have a flight leaving soon. If you're comfortable with it, you're welcome to join me. I'm headed to Seattle as well." Catherine blinked. "Wait, really? Are you sure? I don't want to be a burden." "It wouldn't be a burden at all," he said, his tone sincere. "Actually, it would be nice to have company." Before she could respond, the overhead speaker crackled. "Pre-boarding for Private Gate 4 begins now." Catherine frowned. "Private Gate?" Robert stood, lifting his bag. "Yeah, my family owns an aviation company. We use private flights for business travel." Her brain paused. Private, aviation company, business travel. She stared at him as the pieces slowly clicked. "Robert, are you saying you're, like, wealthy?" He chuckled lightly, rubbing the back of his neck. "I'm saying I have access to a plane. The rest is just background noise." Catherine felt heat rush to her cheeks. I can't afford anything like that." "I didn't ask you to." His voice softened. "It's just a ride. A way to get you where you need to be. Nothing more. And only if you're comfortable." She froze. This didn't feel like some movie moment. It felt real, calm, grounded, strangely safe. Still, it felt surreal. "You don't even know me," she said quietly. "Maybe not yet," Robert replied. "But I'd like to." Something in his voice, humble, honest, made her chest tighten in a way she hadn't felt in years. He wasn't pushing. He wasn't trying to impress her. He wasn't even pretending to be a hero. He was simply offering kindness. And for once, Catherine decided to accept kindness instead of questioning it. "Okay," she said softly. "I'll go." Robert's smile warmed, brightening his entire face. "Great. Let me grab your bag." They walked through a quieter corridor of the airport, away from the crowds. The door to Gate 4 opened into a polished lounge. Modern furniture, soft lighting, a receptionist who immediately greeted Robert by name. "Your plane is ready, Mr. Harrington." Catherine stiffened. Harrington. That name was familiar. The Harrington Group, one of the largest private aviation companies in the country. She turned to look at Robert fully. "You're Robert Harrington? As in the Harringtons?" He winced, like the attention embarrassed him. "Yeah, but I usually just go by Robert." Her mind spun. She had spent the day crying in an airport terminal, while talking to a billionaire without realizing it. And he had treated her with more kindness in 2 hours than her ex-husband had in 2 years. The flight attendant approached. "We're ready when you are." Robert gestured gently. "After you." Catherine stepped onto the jet, her breath catching. The interior was stunning, soft cream seats, warm golden lighting, even a small table set with fresh flowers. Smelled like vanilla and new leather. "This is unreal," she whispered. Robert took the seat across from her. "It's just a plane. The company insists on the fancy stuff." She laughed despite herself. "Well, it's amazing." They settled in as the engines hummed. Catherine watched the runway through the window. As the jet lifted into the sky, she felt her life shift with it. Quietly, but unmistakably. She didn't know it yet, but this flight wasn't the start of a journey to Seattle. It was the start of a journey to him. As the plane rose into the clouds, Robert reached into his bag, pulling out something Catherine never expected. Something that hinted he knew far more about her ex-husband than he'd let on. And when he asked her a question she wasn't ready for, Her entire world tilted again. Would you accept a ride on a billionaire's private jet if you were stranded?
Comment Bilo?
Catherine stood in the terminal, surrounded by rolling suitcases, echoing footsteps, and the low rumble of departing planes. But even with all that noise, all she could hear was the ringing silence left behind by her ex-husband's final words. Figure it out yourself. He had walked away, pulling his suitcase with him, leaving her stranded at the edge of gate C-17 with nothing but her tote bag, a canceled ticket, and a heartbreak that refused to stop pulsing. Catherine swallowed hard, blinking back the tears that kept threatening to spill. She had followed him here, hoping to at least part ways respectfully. Instead, he booked one ticket and left her behind. The loudspeaker announced another boarding call, drowning out the ache in her chest. Families hurried past, couples held hands, friends laughed on the way to their gate, and she stood there alone, feeling like the only person in the entire airport whose life had just cracked open. But she wasn't as alone as she thought. Across the hall, seated by the long row of lounge chairs, a man closed his laptop and watched her with quiet attentiveness. He had noticed the entire scene. Not because he was nosy, but because the pain on her face was impossible to ignore. Robert Lennox wasn't used to noticing strangers. His life was usually fast, structured, efficient, a non-stop stream of meetings, calls, contracts, and decisions. But something about Catherine pulled his eyes toward her like gravity. She wasn't dramatic. She didn't cause a scene. She didn't chase after her ex or shout anything back. She just tried to stay strong. And Robert admired strength expressed in silence. He debated standing up, offering help. But he wasn't sure if approaching her would make things worse. So instead, he watched quietly as she dragged herself to one of the public benches and sat down, burying her face in her hands. Catherine wasn't someone who cried easily. She had spent years being the stable one, the one who organized everything, supported everyone, kept life stitched together. But when she lifted her head again, tears clung to her lashes, shimmering like small betrayals. She inhaled shakily and forced herself to sit straighter. Okay, Catherine, breathe. Her voice trembled, but she was trying. That small whisper was what finally made Robert rise from his seat. He approached slowly, gently, stopping a few feet away so he wouldn't overwhelm her. Excuse me, he said softly. Are you all right? Or would you like help? Catherine startled, quickly wiping her eyes. She didn't recognize him, but something about his calmness put her at ease. He wasn't intruding. He wasn't pitying her. He was simply offering space and respect. I'm fine, she tried to answer, but her voice cracked in the middle of the sentence. She winced, embarrassed. Robert shook his head kindly. You don't have to be fine. Airports are stressful enough even without whatever that was. Catherine let out a breathy, humorless laugh. You saw that, didn't you? I did, Robert admitted, but only because the entire terminal probably felt the temperature drop when he walked away. The unexpected joke loosened something in her chest. She smiled, small, tired, but real. Thank you, she said. I'm Catherine. Robert, he replied. And I promise I'm not some airport weirdo. I'm actually waiting for a flight too. What gate? She asked. He hesitated. Well, actually, I'm not using a commercial gate. Catherine blinked. She didn't understand, but she didn't think too hard about it. Listen, Robert continued gently. I'm not trying to intrude on your personal life, but is there anyone you can call? Anyone who's expecting you? Catherine shook her head. No, my family lives 3 states away, and my ex, well, he made sure I can't use the flight we planned. Something in Robert tightened. Not anger, but empathy so deep he felt it in his bones. Well, he said carefully, I'm not leaving this airport knowing you're stranded. At least let me help you get somewhere safe. A lounge, a ride, a phone call, anything. She studied him, looking for any hint of ulterior motive. But all she saw was sincerity. Why are you being so kind to me? She asked quietly. Because you deserve someone to be, he answered simply. Her eyes softened. No one had said something like that to her in a long time. A voice echoed over the intercom. Private departure for Mr. Lennox is now ready. Catherine didn't react. She had no idea that Mr. Lennox was standing right in front of her. Robert cleared his throat. Well, that's me. My plane is boarding. She jolted upright. Wait, you have a private plane? Robert looked slightly embarrassed. It's complicated. I promise I'm not showing off. Catherine's eyes widened. Suddenly he wasn't just a kind stranger. He was a kind stranger who lived in a world she couldn't even imagine. You're important, she whispered. He smiled gently. Not as important as helping someone who needs it. Catherine's cheeks flushed. I don't want to bother you. You're not. She hesitated. What are you suggesting, exactly? He exhaled slowly, choosing his words carefully, respectfully. I'm not asking you to trust me with everything. But, he offered his hand. You don't deserve to be left behind today. If you want, I can take you home. On my plane. Her breath caught. No one had ever rescued her before. No one had ever chosen her first. But why? She whispered. Because, Robert said softly, everyone deserves a moment when life surprises them in a good way. Catherine's heart thudded painfully, beautifully. She looked at his hand. She looked at his eyes. Kind, steady, expectant. And for the first time in a long time, she took a leap. She placed her hand in his. Okay, she breathed. I'll go with you. Robert's smile was slow, warm, almost relieved. Then let's give you a far better ending to today. And with that, he led her toward the private terminal. Toward a life she never imagined would ever include someone like him. As the doors to the private jet opened, Catherine froze, her breath stolen as she realized the truth. Every staff member greeted Robert with the kind of respect reserved for someone far more powerful than she ever dreamed. Was she stepping into a new beginning, or into a world she didn't belong in? Do you think Catherine made the right choice by trusting Robert? Comment below and subscribe for the next act. As the private terminal doors glided open, Catherine felt her breath halt mid-chest. The space didn't look like anything she had ever seen. Polished marble floors, soft golden lights, quiet attendants moving gracefully like the entire place existed, just to make wealthy travelers feel at ease. But she didn't feel at ease. If anything, she felt smaller with every step. Robert walked at her side, relaxed but attentive, making sure she wasn't overwhelmed. Yet the deeper they went into the terminal, the more obvious something became. This was his normal. And she didn't belong here. Mr. Lennox, a woman in a sleek black uniform greeted warmly. Your jet is prepped. Catering is complete. And your pilot is waiting for your final route confirmation. Catherine nearly stumbled. Mr. Lennox. She had heard the name whispered on the intercom, but it hit differently when someone said it inches from her face. Robert nodded politely. Thank you, Michelle. Michelle's eyes flicked to Catherine, curious, but not judgmental. And good afternoon, miss. If you need anything, please let us know. Catherine flushed. She wasn't dressed for this world. Simple jeans, scuffed flats, and a tote bag she got on clearance. Meanwhile, people here wore pressed suits, designer shoes, and confidence like perfume. Robert noticed her tension immediately. Are you doing okay? He asked gently. Catherine forced a small smile. I'm trying. That's enough, he reassured quietly. They reached a glass walkway leading to the jet, sleek, white, and elegant, with a silver emblem near the door. Is that yours? Catherine asked. Robert hesitated, not to hide the truth, but to avoid seeming arrogant. Yes, he admitted. But I hope it doesn't make you uncomfortable. It's just a lot, she murmured. And that's okay. His tone stayed warm. You're safe. That's the only thing that matters to me right now. The flight attendant at the jet door stepped aside with a respectful nod. Welcome aboard, Mr. Lennox. Catherine followed Robert up the steps, gripping the railing tightly. Inside, the plane was nicer than most living rooms she had ever visited. Cream leather seats, soft lighting, a quiet hum from the overhead vents, tranquility in the sky. Catherine paused in the doorway, unable to move. Robert turned to her. You can sit anywhere you're comfortable. Anywhere? She felt like she shouldn't touch anything. After a moment of indecision, she sat cautiously on the nearest seat, like she expected it to reject her. Robert lowered himself across from her, giving her space. The door closed. The engines stirred awake. The plane began to taxi. Catherine swallowed. Robert, who are you? He leaned back and took a thoughtful breath. Someone who lives a very public life, but never feels truly seen. She blinked in surprise. She expected him to name a giant corporation, list his achievements, or explain his wealth. But he didn't. He simply spoke from the heart. I grew up in the Lennox family, he continued. We own a number of businesses: tech, real estate, aviation, hospitality. The kind of empire people assume makes life perfect. He looked out the window, his expression softening. But wealth doesn't protect you from loneliness. It doesn't guarantee loyalty. And it doesn't make relationships easier. Catherine's chest tightened. He looked so composed. Yet she heard the emptiness behind his words. What about your parents? She asked. They love me, Robert said. But they love the company more. They believe everything should be a strategic partnership. Even relationships. Oh, Catherine whispered. So you've never had a real connection? He gave a quiet smile. Not really. The plane began to lift, gliding smoothly into the sky. Catherine felt gravity press her back against the seat, but her thoughts were weightless, swirling. So when you saw me, she said carefully, you didn't see someone beneath your world? I saw someone strong, Robert replied. Someone who didn't deserve to be abandoned. Someone who needed kindness, not judgment. Catherine's lips parted slightly. It had been so long since anyone saw her without comparing her to someone else. But, Robert added gently, I also don't want you to feel pressured or indebted. You owe me nothing. This flight isn't a favor, just a chance to rewrite an unfair moment. Catherine looked down at her hands. I don't even know why I said yes. Robert leaned forward slightly, not invading her space, just ensuring she heard him clearly. Because deep down, he said softly, you're allowed to accept help. You deserve good things too. Her throat tightened. No one had said that to her in years. The flight attendant appeared beside them with a polite smile. Would either of you like something to drink? Water? Tea? Catherine shook her head, but Robert said, She'll take water, please. Then he added quickly, Only if you want it. She smiled faintly. Water is perfect. The attendant left. Silence fell between them, but it wasn't uncomfortable. Just delicate. After a few moments, Catherine asked, Where exactly are we going? Robert hesitated again, not wanting to overwhelm her. My pilot knows a quiet private airport near the city. I can have a driver take you home or anywhere you feel safe. Catherine raised her eyebrows. You're doing all this for someone you just met? Robert nodded. I am. Why? Because today should have broken you, he said softly. And you didn't let it. Catherine felt warmth spread through her chest, unfamiliar yet comforting. Robert. Yes. Thank you. He smiled gently. You're welcome. The plane leveled in the air, smooth and calm. For the first time all day, Catherine felt herself relax. She wasn't abandoned. She wasn't dismissed. She wasn't invisible. And she had no idea that this flight, this strange, unexpected journey, was only the beginning. Not of luxury, not of wealth, but of a connection she never saw coming. As the plane descended toward the small private runway, Catherine glanced out the window, and her breath caught. A black SUV waited below, but so did a crowd of reporters gathering near the gate. All of them holding cameras. All of them waiting for Robert Lennox. And none of them had any idea who she was. What would happen when the world saw her stepping off his plane? What would you do if the world connected you with a billionaire overnight? Comment Bilo? The private jet leveled out above the clouds, its engines soft, steady, almost soothing. Catherine sat near the window, staring at a world made of white cotton and sunlight. It didn't feel real, 2 hours ago, she had been standing alone in a crowded airport with her heart in pieces. Now she was wrapped in a thick blanket, sipping hot chocolate, flying on a billionaire's jet. A jet she hadn't even realized belonged to the quiet man who had offered her a seat. Robert. He sat across from her now, his laptop open but untouched. He kept pretending to read something on the screen, yet his eyes kept drifting toward her. Brief glances, polite, almost shy. She wondered how someone with so much power could look so human. For a moment they just existed in the comfortable quiet, the kind that didn't press or demand anything. The kind Catherine hadn't felt in years. Finally, Robert spoke. "Catherine, I hope this flight isn't making you uncomfortable." She blinked. "Uncomfortable? Robert, I've never felt safer in my life." The words surprised even her. He let out a breath he'd been holding. "Good. I didn't want you to think I was trying to take advantage of the situation. You helped me," she said softly. "You didn't have to, but you saw a woman stranded and you stepped in." She smiled faintly. "There aren't many people who would." Robert's expression warmed, though a small sadness flickered behind it. "I know what it feels like to be left behind." She looked at him then, really looked. His tailored suit, his confident posture. He seemed like someone who had never been abandoned a day in his life. But pain didn't always wear the clothes people expected. "What happened?" she asked gently. He hesitated, then closed his laptop. 5 years ago I was engaged. Or, I thought I was. I was traveling for work when she told me, over a voicemail, that she didn't want this life anymore. The business, the schedule, the pressure. His voice lowered. She left me right before a major meeting, and I had to walk into that boardroom acting like it didn't tear a hole straight through me. Catherine's breath caught. "I'm so sorry." He shrugged softly. "Life goes on, but being left at a moment when you need someone most." His eyes met hers. "I knew what that felt like, and when I saw you standing alone in that terminal, I couldn't walk past." Catherine felt warmth spread through her chest. Not the dizzy warmth of romantic sparks, just the steady kind that came from being understood. "Thank you, Robert," she said. "Really?" He nodded once, almost embarrassed. "Anytime." The pilot stepped out for a moment. "Mr. Hale? We'll land in about an hour." Mr. Hale. Catherine's mind froze. She'd heard that name before. Everywhere, in fact. Hale Enterprises. Hale Technologies. Hale Real Estate. Hale Shipping. Hale everything. She turned slowly to Robert. "Your last name is Hale?" He rubbed the back of his neck, a guilty smile forming. "I was going to tell you." "You're that Hale?" she asked, barely above a whisper. "Yes," he admitted. "Robert Hale, CEO." The room swayed for a moment. Not dramatically, but enough to make her grip the blanket. She wasn't sitting on a private jet with just a kind stranger. She was sitting with one of the most powerful businessmen in the country. "I didn't lie," Robert said gently. "I just didn't introduce myself with a title." He shook his head. "People treat me differently when they know who I am." Catherine swallowed. "Why tell me now?" "Because you deserve the truth." Then he added quietly, "And because I didn't want to insult your intelligence by letting you find out on your own." Catherine exhaled slowly. She didn't feel angry, just overwhelmed. "Robert, I don't care who you are," she finally said. "You were kind when you didn't need to be. That matters more than your last name." His shoulders relaxed, the tension melting from his face. "Thank you," he said, almost whispering it. A soft turbulence bumped the plane, and Catherine involuntarily reached for the armrest. Robert noticed and gently asked, "Are you okay?" "I'm fine," she said, though her pulse quickened. He smiled reassuringly. "I promise, turbulence is normal. You're safe." Safe. She kept hearing that word around him. And the strange part was, she believed it. They spent the next 30 minutes talking, about childhood memories, about their favorite books, even about embarrassing travel moments. Catherine found herself laughing more than she had in ages. At one point, Robert tilted his head. "Can I ask you something?" "Sure." When he left you at the airport, did he at least tell you why? The question hit a soft bruise, but not in a painful way, more like someone gently acknowledging it was there. No, she answered, and I don't think I'll ever really understand. But maybe that's okay. Maybe I don't need his answers anymore. Robert considered that. Good, because anyone willing to leave someone like you behind. He paused, searching for the right words. Clearly didn't know what he had. Catherine's breath stilled, her heart giving one quiet, surprised thump. Robert, he held up a hand quickly. Not flirting, he clarified, respectful and calm. Just being honest. She nodded slowly. Thank you. And somewhere in the quiet between them, something gentle began forming. Not love. Not yet. Just the beginning of a possibility. Like the first glow of sunrise before the sun itself appears. As the plane began its descent, Catherine glanced at Robert. Why me? She asked softly. Why go this far for someone you just met? He didn't answer right away. Then, with quiet sincerity, he said, because sometimes life gives you a chance to do the right thing. And because you looked like someone who deserved a little kindness after being shown none. Her eyes warmed. I'll never forget this flight. He smiled. I hope you won't. As the jet touched down, Catherine didn't know what awaited her in the new state, or why fate had placed a billionaire CEO beside her on the hardest day of her life. But the moment the doors opened, a black car waited on the runway, and a woman stepped out calling Robert's name with urgency. Who was she? A colleague? A family member? Someone from his past? And why did she look shocked to see Catherine beside him? What do you think is waiting for Catherine at the runway? Should she trust Robert as their journey continues? Comment your thoughts below. The jet rolled to a gentle stop on the private runway, sunlight sweeping across the sleek surface of the plane. Catherine gathered her things, just a small tote bag really, and tried to steady her breathing. The reality of everything was hitting her at once. Her ex-husband leaving her, Robert's unexpected kindness, the private jet, the confession of who he truly was, and the fact that someone was waiting for him with urgency written all over her posture. The door opened. Robert stepped out first, the wind brushing across his shirt sleeves, lifting his hair slightly. Catherine followed slowly, gripping her tote strap with both hands. The woman on the runway, mid-40s, sharp suit, brisk stride, rushed forward. Robert, she said, relief washing over her features. Thank God. The board has been calling nonstop. And her voice trailed off the instant she noticed Catherine. She blinked once, twice, then looked at Robert with a raised brow. And who is this? Catherine stiffened, suddenly very aware of her wrinkled clothes and travel-worn appearance. Her instinct was to step back, to make herself small, to avoid becoming a problem. But Robert didn't let the moment hang awkwardly. This is Catherine, he said calmly. She'll be staying for a few days. She's a guest. A guest. The word felt impossibly strange. The woman's eyebrow arched higher. A guest. I see. Then she straightened, regaining her professional tone. For clarity, who exactly is she to you? Catherine's stomach twisted. She hated drama. She hated being in the middle of anything that felt like tension. And the last thing she wanted was to be viewed as someone trying to take advantage of Robert. But before she could say a word, Robert spoke again. Gentler this time, but firm. She's someone who needed help, and I offered it. The woman's demeanor softened instantly, not because of Catherine necessarily, but because she understood Robert's tone, final, sincere. I'm Linda, she said finally, introducing herself to Catherine. I'm Robert's chief operations advisor. Catherine nodded, relaxing a little. Nice to meet you. Linda didn't smile. Exactly. But her expression shifted to something more neutral and respectful. Welcome, she said. Let us know if you need anything. As they walked toward the waiting car, Catherine leaned toward Robert slightly. I didn't mean to cause trouble. You didn't, he assured her. Linda just worries. It's her job. But the board? Catherine asked. It sounds serious. Robert exhaled slowly. The company is always serious, but they can wait. I owe you a peaceful evening first. Catherine shook her head. You don't owe me anything. Maybe not, he said, opening the car door for her. But I want to make sure today ends better than it started for you. The words warmed her in a way she wasn't prepared for. She stepped inside. The car ride took them through a stretch of quiet roads lined with tall trees on both sides. After 20 minutes, the city skyline appeared, sleek, modern, almost glowing in the late afternoon light. And then Catherine realized where they were heading. Robert, is this your home? He hesitated only a second. My main residence, yes. Her breath caught. Not because she was impressed, though the sight of the towering glass building certainly justified that reaction, but because she felt suddenly out of place. Robert, I don't know if I should. He turned to her gently. Catherine, it's a place to rest. Nothing more. No expectations. No pressure. I don't want you worrying about where you'll sleep tonight. His tone was sincere, grounded, free of any romantic implication. That made it even more disarming. Okay, she said softly. Thank you. Inside, the lobby was large, elegant, and quiet. The concierge nodded at Robert respectfully before greeting Catherine warmly. As the penthouse elevator ascended, Catherine tried, unsuccessfully, to calm her racing thoughts. This is temporary. This doesn't mean anything. Don't overthink. Just breathe. But when the doors opened, her breath still hitched. Floor-to-ceiling windows. Soft golden light spilling across hardwood floors. A room that looked more like a luxury suite than any home she had ever seen. Robert, she whispered. It's beautiful. He gave a modest shrug. I spend most of my time in meetings. Honestly, the place is too big for one person. She smiled faintly at that. I can see that. He motioned gently toward the guest room. You can stay there as long as you need. The kitchen is open to you. And if you want something specific, food, toiletries, clothes, just tell me. I'll make sure you have it. Catherine shook her head. Robert, please. I don't want to be a burden. You're not, he said quietly. She looked up at him then, truly seeing the sincerity carved into his features. You helped me at the airport, he continued. Let me help you now. Catherine's throat tightened with emotion she didn't dare show. Okay, she whispered. Just for tonight. That's all I'm asking, he answered softly. After she freshened up, Catherine walked into the living area and found Robert standing by the large windows, hands in his pockets, staring at the skyline. Something in his posture looked thoughtful, maybe even lonely. She approached quietly. You okay? He nodded. Just thinking. About how strange life is, he said. One moment you're in a board meeting. The next, you're sitting beside a stranger who feels unexpectedly easy to talk to. Her heart gave a small tremor. Robert. He turned to her, his expression warm but careful. Relax. I'm not creating expectations. I'm just being honest. She breathed out a soft laugh. Today was a lot. It was, he agreed. But I'm glad you didn't have to face it alone. Catherine swallowed gently. Thank you for everything. You're welcome. They stood in the quiet glow of the evening. Two people whose worlds had collided in the unlikeliest of ways. Not lovers. Not anything more than two souls sharing a moment of calm after chaos. But something was beginning slowly, softly. Something they both felt without naming. And neither of them knew where it would lead. Later that night, as Catherine tried to sleep in the soft guest bed, her phone buzzed. A message from her ex-husband. We need to talk. Tomorrow. No apology. No explanation. Just a demand. Catherine stared at the screen, unsure whether to ignore it or face whatever storm he was bringing. And what would Robert say if he knew? Should Catherine meet her ex? Yes or no? What would you do? Comment Bilo? Catherine followed Robert through the quiet halls of the private terminal, still stunned by the sheer contrast between where her day began and where she now found herself. Just hours ago, she had been fighting tears in a crowded airport restroom because the man who promised to love her simply left. But now, here she was, walking beside someone who had shown her more kindness in an afternoon than her ex had shown her in years. The automatic doors slid open, revealing a softly lit lounge designed for passengers boarding private jets. Everything felt impossibly serene. The gentle hum of background music, the smell of fresh leather, the glow of modern pendant lights. Catherine wrapped her arms around herself, unsure if she belonged. Robert noticed. He slowed his pace so she could catch up, then offered her a comforting smile. "You okay?" he asked. "I think so." She exhaled with a shaky laugh. "Just trying to process all of this." "That makes two of us," he admitted. The honesty in his voice made her lift her eyes. He wasn't behaving like some untouchable billionaire CEO. He wasn't bragging, flexing, or flaunting. He looked human, slightly tired, slightly worried about her, slightly worried about something else too. Something he wasn't saying yet. They settled onto a wide caramel-colored sofa tucked into the corner of the lounge. Catherine sat carefully, afraid she'd wrinkle something worth more than her entire bank account. Robert chuckled softly. "You don't have to act so careful. It's just furniture." "That's easy for you to say," she teased back. Her smile made something warm flicker in his eyes. A staff member approached with bottles of chilled water. "Anything else I can bring you, Mr. Hale?" "Mr. Hale." Catherine froze. Her eyes drifted slowly toward Robert. He cleared his throat. "Just the water for now. Thank you." The staff member nodded politely and left. Catherine placed her bottle on the table. "Robert Hale?" she repeated carefully. "Is that your last name?" He closed his eyes for a brief second, caught. "Catherine," he began gently. "I was going to tell you. Today just wasn't exactly predictable." She leaned back slowly, putting some emotional space between them. "Why didn't you say anything earlier?" "I didn't want you to feel overwhelmed," he said quietly, "or think I was offering you a ride to impress you." Catherine let the words settle. The sincerity in them felt real, but curiosity pressed harder. "Okay, but Hale as in Hale Enterprises. There." It was out. She watched his expression shift, something like reluctant acceptance. "Yes," he said softly. The air stilled. Catherine's breath caught in her throat. Everyone in the country knew that company. Every commercial, every charity gala, every news article about innovation and leadership. The CEO was practically American royalty. Her voice was a whisper. "Robert, you're him?" He didn't look proud. He didn't look smug. He looked vulnerable. "I'm still just me," he said. "The guy who saw someone hurting at gate 22 and didn't want her to be alone." Emotion surged in her chest, unexpected and almost overwhelming. She pressed a hand to her heart, steadying herself. "Why tell me now?" she asked softly. "Because," he said, leaning forward, "I don't want you stepping onto that jet without knowing who you're traveling with." He looked at her with an openness that made her throat tighten. "And because you deserve honesty, something you weren't given today." The wound of her ex-husband's betrayal stung again, but differently this time, blunted by the presence of someone who handled her with gentle truth. She took a slow breath. "So, you're a billionaire." He nodded once. "Yes. And you're offering me a seat on your private jet." "Yes. And you're not expecting anything in return?" A small smile tugged at his mouth. "Nothing except your company for the flight, if you're comfortable with that." Catherine studied him. He wasn't leaning toward her. He wasn't pressuring her. He wasn't flirting or hinting or trying to win her. He was just sincere, and that sincerity melted her fear. "I'm comfortable," she admitted. "More than I expected to be." His shoulder relaxed with visible relief. But before either of them could speak again, a soft chime sounded overhead. A calm voice announced, "Mr. Hale, the captain would like to confirm your departure time. Please check in at your convenience." Robert stood, then hesitated. "Before we board," he said gently, "can I ask you something?" She tilted her head. "What is it?" "You've had a long, painful day. Are you sure you want to fly tonight? We can stay here. We can wait until morning." I don't want you making decisions while exhausted. Catherine blinked, touched. Her ex would never have asked a question like that. Her ex never paused to consider how she felt. He simply expected her to follow. But Robert, he was giving her choices she didn't know she needed. She rose slowly. I want to go, she said. With you. He didn't grin. He didn't cheer. He simply nodded, deeply, like someone accepting something precious. Then we go together. As they walked toward the boarding door, Catherine felt a sudden rush of fear. Not about Robert, but about herself. What if she got too attached? What if she expected too much? What if she misunderstood his kindness? She stopped walking. Robert turned. Catherine, before we get on that plane, I need to know something. He stepped closer, concern softening his expression. Tell me. She swallowed hard. Why me? Why are you being so kind to me? His eyes warmed in a way that felt steady and grounding. Because, he said, you remind me of what real people look like, and because you're someone worth being kind to. Her breath trembled. He held out his hand, not demanding, just offering. Ready. She took it, and the doors to the jet bridge slid open. The cabin of the private jet was quiet, lit softly by warm recessed lights along the ceiling. Catherine sat by the window, still processing the whirlwind of events that had brought her here. Her fingers traced the condensation on the glass, watching the city lights fade beneath them as the plane ascended. Robert remained beside her, calm and collected, the image of the billionaire CEO softened by the relaxed setting of the jet. He wasn't a distant figure anymore. He was close enough that she could sense the subtle heat of his presence and hear the gentle rhythm of his breathing. You okay? He asked quietly, breaking the silence. I think so, she replied, keeping her voice steady though her chest raced. It's just a lot. You, the jet, everything. He nodded slowly, understanding. I know. Sudden. And I know it probably feels unreal. She gave a small, tired smile. Understatement of the year. Robert took a seat across from her, leaning forward, elbows on his knees. Catherine, I know this is all happening fast, and I'm not trying to rush anything. I need to be honest with you. Catherine looked at him, curious and cautious. I wasn't planning on falling for anyone right now, he said. His voice was low, sincere, carrying weight. I left the airport, the wedding, everything behind to start over, to find a version of life I hadn't lived before. And then I met you, and somehow, you've changed everything. Her pulse quickened. She wanted to respond, to tell him that the same thing had happened to her, but words felt inadequate. You make me want to be better, he continued, eyes locked on hers. Not the billionaire, not the CEO, just me. And I don't want to lose that. Catherine's throat went dry. She swallowed, gathering courage. Robert, He reached across the small aisle of the cabin, stopping just short of her hand, giving her space while still signaling his intent. I know you've had your share of disappointment. I know people haven't always been kind or honest with you. I just want you to know, I'm not like that. And I'm not leaving. A warmth spread through her chest. She wanted to reach for him. She wanted to trust him. But fear lingered. What if I can't? She whispered. What if I let my past make me doubt you? He gave a gentle, understanding smile. Then we take it one step at a time. That's all anyone can ask for. I'll wait. I can wait. Catherine exhaled slowly, the knot in her stomach loosening slightly. She let herself believe in this moment, the way he looked at her, not as a conquest or a headline, but as a person he wanted near. For a while, they sat in silence, watching the clouds pass under the glow of the cabin lights. The hum of the jet's engines became a background melody to the unspoken connection forming between them. Suddenly, Catherine's phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen and her heart skipped. An email from her workplace. An urgent request she had forgotten in the chaos of the day. I need to handle this, she said reluctantly, reaching for her phone. Robert noticed, concern flickering across his face. Do you want me to help? She shook her head, a small laugh escaping. No, I've got it. But, thanks for asking. He smiled, leaning back, watching her with an intensity that made her cheeks warm. Just making sure you're not drowning while I'm sitting here, looking like the carefree billionaire, he teased lightly. She laughed softly, tension easing, and for a moment the jet felt like their own private world. A bubble removed from the rush of life outside. Hours passed. They talked quietly, laughed at small jokes, shared stories from childhood and snippets of their ordinary lives. Catherine discovered that behind the polished, perfect exterior of Robert Hale was a man who loved his morning coffee the wrong way, who hated ironing shirts, and who had a secret weakness for old-school detective novels. She found herself relaxing more than she had in years, the walls she had built around her heart slowly giving way. Robert noticed, and it made him smile softly. He wanted to tell her everything. His fears, his doubts, the pressure of being a billionaire. But he waited, letting her feel safe, letting her decide how close to let him in. As the plane soared above the clouds, Catherine glanced at Robert, realizing something she hadn't expected. She was happy, truly happy. Not from luxury, not from wealth, not from a handsome billionaire. Just from the feeling of being seen, valued, and safe. Robert caught her gaze and reached out, brushing a strand of hair from her face. The gesture was simple, intimate, and spoke volumes. I hope you don't mind me saying this, he murmured. But I think I could get used to being around you. Catherine's heart skipped. She wanted to say yes. She wanted to tell him he already had. But before she could answer, the jet hit a patch of turbulence. A gentle shake that reminded them both that life, even now, wasn't perfectly smooth. She laughed nervously, gripping the edge of her seat. Wow, okay. That's dramatic timing. He chuckled, tension easing from his shoulders. Turbulence in the sky, and in our hearts, perhaps? Her laughter rang out, genuine, echoing through the cabin. But as she smiled, a pang of reality struck her. The flight would end. The city below would soon appear, and reality would creep back in with all its responsibilities, expectations, and complications. Would their connection survive beyond the jet? She didn't know. Robert seemed to sense her hesitation. He reached out again, this time letting their hands brush. Lightly, deliberately. Whatever happens after we land, he said, I just want you to know, I'm not going anywhere unless you want me to. Her eyes softened, her heart thudding with a mix of hope and fear. I think I need a little time to process all of this, she admitted. He nodded, understanding. Take all the time you need. I'll be here. And for that moment, Catherine believed him. She allowed herself to imagine a life where trust and care weren't fleeting, where someone genuinely valued her beyond appearances. But just as she leaned back, savoring the fleeting peace, her phone buzzed again. Another email, this one marked urgent, flashing on the small screen. She sighed. Looks like reality is waiting for me. Robert's gaze softened, but a shadow of worry crossed his face. We'll face it together, he said firmly. The plane hummed steadily, gliding toward its destination. But even in the quiet, the question lingered. Could love really survive the turbulence of life outside the cabin? Catherine's urgent email hinted at unexpected news that could change the course of her life, and her growing connection with Robert. Will their bond survive the challenges waiting on the ground, or will reality pull them apart before it truly begins? If you were Catherine, would you give the billionaire a chance even after all the surprises? Comment Bilo? Catherine stared out of the jet's window as the city lights began to emerge below them. The sprawling skyline of New York glimmered like a constellation, every building a reminder of the life she'd temporarily escaped. She had spent hours laughing, sharing stories, and even daring to imagine a life beyond constant stress. But the reality waiting on the ground loomed larger now than ever. Her phone buzzed again. Another urgent message from work. Immediate meeting. Client situation requires your input. Her chest tightened. She felt the familiar pull of responsibility, of obligation, of proving herself in a world that had never handed her anything without effort. Robert watched her carefully, sensing the conflict. He reached out, gently placing a hand over hers. Catherine, hey, breathe. Whatever this is, we can handle it together. You don't have to face it alone. She looked at him, her green eyes wide, searching for reassurance. But what if it's too much? I can't just leave things unfinished, Robert. People are counting on me. And yet, he said softly, you've been carrying all that weight by yourself. You've been running from one responsibility to the next without stopping. You deserve a choice, not a sentence. She swallowed, uncertainty battling desire. The truth was, she didn't just want him beside her. She needed him. But she also feared what stepping fully into this world would mean. A billionaire's life was nothing like hers. It was glamorous, scrutinized, demanding. Could she ever belong there? Robert leaned closer, eyes searching hers. Catherine, I'm not offering a life without challenges, but I am offering honesty, respect, and someone who will always have your back. If you take my hand, it doesn't erase your life. It just means I walk it with you. Her heart thumped audibly. He wasn't just a wealthy man offering a life of luxury. He was offering partnership, care, and a chance to be seen. Truly seen. I don't know if I'm ready, she admitted, voice trembling slightly. Then take your time, he said, his hand still warm over hers. No pressure, no expectations. But know this, I'll wait. I'll wait as long as it takes. The jet tilted gently, a reminder of the physical journey they were on, mirroring the emotional one Catherine faced. Her thoughts drifted to the moments that had drawn her to him. His patience, his laughter, his effortless charm when he wasn't the billionaire everyone expected him to be. She thought about how he had listened without judgment, how he had cared without obligation, how he had shown her kindness without expectation. And then she thought about herself, her independence, her work ethic, her fear of trusting too quickly. Could she step beyond that fear? Could she allow herself to be vulnerable? Catherine took a deep breath and looked at Robert squarely. I think I want to try, she said softly, almost a whisper. Robert's eyes lit up, and a smile tugged at the corners of his mouth. Try. Yes, she confirmed, a small laugh escaping her lips. I don't know how this works yet. I don't know the rules, but I want to see if we can figure it out together. Relief, joy, and all washed over him. He reached across, finally letting his fingers intertwine with hers. The simple gesture sent a warmth through both of them, a promise unspoken but understood. The jet continued to glide through the night sky, but in that cabin, time seemed to slow. For the first time in months or years, Catherine felt that she could breathe freely. She felt that she could belong, even if just for a moment, beside someone who truly understood her. Robert, too, felt a shift deep within. The weight of expectation, the pressures of wealth and status, they all faded in the presence of Catherine's trust. He had built walls around his heart for decades, only letting a select few see beyond the billionaire persona. But here, with her, those walls crumbled without fear of judgment. The remainder of the flight passed in comfortable silence. Words were no longer necessary. Their joined hands spoke volumes. Catherine found herself resting against the seat, letting exhaustion and relief wash over her. Robert kept a gentle, protective presence nearby, a steady reassurance that no matter what awaited them on the ground, they would face it together. As the plane descended toward the private airstrip, reality crept in. There were emails to answer, meetings to attend, decisions to make. Catherine's mind swirled with anticipation and anxiety, but she knew she wouldn't have to face it alone. Finally, the wheels touched down smoothly. The private jet taxied to its hangar, engines winding down. Robert glanced at Catherine, giving her hand a reassuring squeeze. Ready? He asked, his tone both playful and tender. She nodded, taking a deep breath. Ready. They stepped off the plane together, the cool night air brushing against their faces. The city lights sparkled around them, a vibrant contrast to the quiet intimacy they had shared above the clouds. For a moment, neither spoke. They simply walked side by side, hands intertwined, feeling the shift in their connection. But just as Catherine began to relax, her phone buzzed again. A message flashed across the screen, one that made her stomach tighten. It was from her ex-husband. The words were curt, almost spiteful. I heard you're with him. Enjoy your little fantasy while it lasts. You'll see how real life works soon. Catherine's grip on Robert's hand tightened instinctively, a mix of anger and disbelief coursing through her. She felt exposed, vulnerable, and suddenly afraid that the fragile trust she had begun to build could be threatened. Robert noticed immediately. "What is it?" he asked gently, concern etched into his features. She hesitated, debating whether to share the message. Finally, she showed him the screen. Robert read the message quickly, a frown flickering across his face. Then he looked at her with unwavering resolve. "Ignore it," he said firmly. "That's not your life anymore. It's your choice who you walk with, and I'm here. With you. Always." Her heart fluttered. She realized then that love wasn't about perfection or a life without challenges. It was about trust, commitment, and choosing each other despite the noise of the world. Catherine met his gaze, seeing a depth of sincerity she had rarely encountered. And in that moment, she made her decision. Not just about him, but about herself, about opening her heart fully, despite past disappointments. As they approached the car waiting at the hangar, Catherine's phone buzzed again. This time, an unexpected email with news that could change her career path forever. Would she be able to embrace both love and ambition without losing either? If you were Catherine, would you let your heart take a chance on love while facing unexpected challenges? Catherine sat in the sleek black car, the city lights streaking past her window as if painting her thoughts in motion. Her heart still raced from the jet ride, from the closeness she had shared with Robert, and now from the unexpected email flashing on her phone. It was an offer from the publishing company she had dreamed about for years, an opportunity to lead a major project, a chance to finally prove herself in a way that mattered. But it also meant relocating temporarily to another city, a new challenge she wasn't sure she could face while navigating the delicate beginning of her relationship with Robert. Robert glanced at her from the driver's seat, noticing the slight tension in her jaw and the furrow in her brow. "Everything okay?" he asked gently, his hand brushing hers across the seat. She exhaled slowly, debating whether to confide in him. She had learned over the past days that he wasn't just any man. He listened, understood, and never judged. So she showed him the email. He read it carefully, eyes narrowing thoughtfully. Then he looked at her, and she saw that unwavering determination in his gaze. "This is amazing," he said. "It's everything you've worked for, and I want you to take it." "But," she began, hesitating, "it means more work, more stress, and I don't know if I can balance it with us." Robert smiled softly. "Catherine, this isn't a test. You don't have to choose between your dreams and our connection. We'll figure it out together. Love doesn't mean limiting yourself. It means building a life that includes each other, no matter the obstacles." Her chest warmed at his words. For the first time, she realized that love didn't have to be complicated. It just had to be real. And Robert had proven every day that his feelings were genuine, unshakable, and patient. The car stopped outside her apartment. She looked at him, eyes shimmering with emotion. I don't know what I would have done if you hadn't been there," she admitted. "You wouldn't have had to wonder," he replied, his voice low, steady. "Because I'm here. Always." She laughed softly, a mixture of relief and disbelief. "You make it sound so easy." Robert shook his head. "No, love is never easy. But it's worth it when it's real." They stepped inside together, the familiar hum of her apartment suddenly feeling like a warm, secure space rather than a place of struggle. Catherine's eyes scanned the room, taking in the small details. The books she treasured, the photos she loved, the little quirks of her home. It was her world, and now, somehow, Robert felt like he belonged in it too. "Sit," he said, gesturing to the couch. "Tell me about everything. About the email, about the choices, about what's going on in your mind." Catherine sank into the cushions, letting herself relax for the first time in days. She shared everything. Her fears, her dreams, the pressures she felt, and the joy of this new connection. And Robert listened, nodding, asking questions, sharing insights without ever overshadowing her voice. Hours passed as they talked. The city outside settled into a quiet night, but inside, a new rhythm began to form. A rhythm of trust, understanding, and shared laughter. Catherine realized that love didn't have to be a grand gesture or a whirlwind romance. It could be quiet, steadfast, and reassuring. And that was exactly what Robert offered. Finally, she took a deep breath and looked at him. "I've made a decision," she said softly, almost afraid to voice it. Robert leaned forward, eyes locked on hers. "And what's that?" "I want to take the project," she said, voice firm. "And I want to do it knowing you're by my side. I don't want to limit myself because of fear. And I don't want to miss us, because I'm afraid of what comes next." Relief, pride, and warmth flooded Robert's face. "Catherine," he murmured, reaching for her hand. "That's the bravest thing I've ever heard you say." They shared a quiet moment, hands intertwined, hearts beating in sync. In that instant, the past, the pain of abandonment, the disappointment from failed relationships, the fears of failure, melted away. What remained was a clear path forward, together. Over the next few days, Catherine began preparing for her new role while continuing to spend time with Robert. They walked through city streets, shared quiet mornings with coffee, and laughed over small moments of life. It was simple, but it was enough. And then came the evening that would seal their bond. Robert invited Catherine to a private rooftop dinner, overlooking the city skyline. Candles flickered, casting soft light across their faces, the gentle hum of the city beneath them. "Catherine," he said, taking both her hands in his, "I know the past has taught you caution, and I know my world can be overwhelming. But I need you to know something. I want you not because of anything you can do for me, but because of who you are. Every part of you, your courage, your heart, your laughter. I've fallen in love with it all." Tears pricked Catherine's eyes. She shook her head, a small laugh escaping. "You really do make it easy to love you," she whispered. Robert smiled softly. "Not easy, but real." She leaned in, resting her forehead against his, feeling the warmth, the sincerity, the promise in his touch. And in that moment, every doubt, every fear, every obstacle seemed manageable because they had chosen each other fully. The city lights stretched endlessly, but all Catherine could see was him, and all Robert could see was her. Two hearts, bound by trust, understanding, and a love that had been worth the wait. As they stood there on the rooftop, a gentle breeze carrying the promise of new beginnings, Catherine realized that life's uncertainties no longer scared her. Because with Robert by her side, she was ready for anything, even love beyond imagination. Thank you so much for watching my story all the way to the end. Your support means everything. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel and drop a comment below. I'd love to hear your thoughts.